25 people were aboard. Not one was ever found. In this episode of Vanished, we investigate the MV Joyita mystery, one of the most baffling unsolved maritime mysteries of the 20th century. In our last episode, we explored how Brian Schaefer walked into a Columbus bar and vanished without a trace. Today, we move from a crowded American city to the vast emptiness of the South Pacific. In 1955, a missing crew Pacific ship drifted for weeks before anyone found it. A ghost ship from 1955 that would become known as the Mary Celeste of the Pacific. The radio was set to the international distress frequency. Bloodied bandages lay on deck, but every soul aboard had vanished. This South Pacific disappearance has haunted investigators for nearly 70 years, and no one has ever explained what happened. The Joyita was no ordinary vessel. She was built in 1931 at a shipyard in Los Angeles, a 69-foot luxury yacht commissioned for the movie director Roland West. Her name meant Little Jewel in Spanish, reportedly chosen by the silent film actress Jewel Carmen. For years, the Joyita served as a pleasure craft in the glamorous waters off Southern California. But war changed everything. During World War II, the United States Navy requisitioned her as a patrol boat. She served in Hawaiian waters, her elegance stripped away for military purpose. After the war, the Joyita passed through several owners and eventually ended up in Apia, the capital of Western Samoa. By 1955, the vessel was under the command of Thomas Henry Dodsey Miller, a Welsh-born captain who had lived in the Pacific Islands for years. Miller was an experienced mariner and a qualified doctor, a colorful figure known throughout the islands. He was devoted to the Joyita, refusing offers to sell her despite her increasingly poor condition. The 25 people who boarded her on the 3rd of October 1955 included crew members, government officials, and 2 children. They were traveling from Apia to the Tokelau Islands, a remote group of atolls roughly 270 miles to the north. Among the passengers were a government medical officer, a copra inspector, and several islanders making the journey home. Each of them had lives, families, reasons to make this routine voyage. None of them would arrive. The Joyita departed Apia Harbor at dawn. The voyage should have taken no more than 2 days, but when the ship failed to arrive at the Tokelau Islands, no alarm was immediately raised. Communications in this part of the Pacific were unreliable in the 1950s, and delays were common. It took days before authorities in Apia initiated a search. The Royal New Zealand Air Force launched aircraft to scan the vast ocean between Samoa and Tokelau. Ships joined the effort. But the Pacific is enormous, and they found nothing. The search was eventually called off. Then, on the 10th of November, more than 5 weeks after the Joyita had sailed, a merchant vessel spotted her. She was found drifting roughly 600 miles west of her intended course, partially submerged and listing heavily to port. The vessel was waterlogged but still afloat. And this is the detail that deepens the mystery. The Joyita's hull was lined with cork, making her virtually unsinkable. What searchers found aboard was deeply unsettling. The ship's logbook was missing. The navigation equipment had been removed. 3 of the vessel's 4 lifeboats were gone. The engine clutch had been deliberately bypassed with a piece of pipe, suggesting the engine had failed and someone had jury-rigged a temporary repair. Most disturbingly, bloodied bandages were discovered. A doctor's bag was found open, its contents partially used. The radio was tuned to 2182 kilocycles, the international distress frequency, but the range was limited. A broken wire meant the signal could only have reached about 2 miles. No distress signal was ever received by anyone. The cargo was gone. Food, medical supplies, timber, and empty fuel drums, all missing. Every passenger, every crew member, every sign of life, gone. A commission of inquiry was convened in Apia to investigate the Joyita's fate. investigators faced an extraordinary challenge: a ship with no crew, no log, and no witnesses. The physical evidence told a partial story. The port engine had failed before departure. The Joyita left a PIA running on only one engine. A broken cooling pipe was believed to have allowed seawater to flood the bilge, gradually causing the vessel to list. Investigators concluded the flooding was slow, perhaps taking hours or even days. But here is what baffled them. The Joyita was virtually unsinkable. Her cork lining meant she would stay afloat even fully waterlogged. Captain Miller, who knew this vessel intimately, would have known that staying aboard was far safer than taking to open lifeboats in the Pacific. Why would anyone abandon a floating ship for a rubber raft in one of the most remote stretches of ocean on Earth? The inquiry produced more questions than answers. The bloodied bandages suggested someone was injured, but the nature and severity of the injury remained unknown. The missing logbook and navigational equipment suggested deliberate removal. But by whom? And why? Theories multiplied in the years that followed. Some investigators theorized that Japanese fishermen, operating illegally in the area, may have encountered the disabled vessel and attacked the passengers. This theory pointed to the missing cargo and equipment as evidence of piracy. But no evidence of Japanese involvement was ever found, and no survivors or bodies surfaced. Others suggested that after the vessel began taking on water and listing severely, passengers panicked and abandoned ship despite Captain Miller's objections. The bloodied bandages might indicate Miller was injured, perhaps incapacitated, leaving no one with the authority or knowledge to keep the group aboard. Without Miller's leadership, the terrified passengers may have taken to the lifeboats and perished in the open ocean. A more speculative theory involved insurance fraud or mutiny, but no evidence supported either scenario. The truth is, we simply do not know. Here is what the evidence actually supports. The Joyita was in poor mechanical condition when she sailed. Her port engine was already dead. A cooling pipe failure likely caused progressive flooding. The radio's broken wiring meant no distress call could reach shore. Captain Miller almost certainly knew the ship would not sink. The strongest theory, supported by circumstantial evidence, is that passengers abandoned the still-floating vessel in a state of panic and perished at sea in the lifeboats. But this remains unproven. No lifeboats, no bodies, no wreckage from the passengers was ever recovered. The one piece of evidence that could have answered everything, the ship's logbook, was never found. The MV Joyita case remains officially unsolved. The vessel herself was salvaged, repaired, and returned to service, but she sank again in 1956 and was eventually scrapped. 25 families across the Pacific never received answers. The case changed nothing about maritime safety regulations. No new protocols emerged. The Pacific simply swallowed 25 people and kept it secret. That is what makes this case so haunting. Not a single trace of 25 human beings has ever surfaced. The ship survived. The people did not, and we may never know why. Next time on Vanished, we travel to the jungles of New Guinea, where a billionaire's son vanished in 1961. The disappearance of Michael Rockefeller. What happened when privilege met the most remote place on Earth? Subscribe. We investigate a new cold case multiple times a week.